Back in 2023, Halo Infinite's third multiplayer season released and introduced an entire core's worth of some of the ugliest armours in Halo's history, Chimera. Yet for some reason the game continued to release more pieces for the Chimera core over time. However, unlike the other event armours in MCC and Infinite, this core existed within the main timeline, with a direct link to the state of the created by the time of Halo Infinite. Does the lore make up for the awful designs? No. Is the lore unique? No, but it at least gives an interesting view into what the created planned for the wider Halo galaxy. On top of this, I've never seen the popular Halo content creators cover the lore in depth, even within the renewed content drought. After Cortana's destruction, and the Didacts disconnecting the domain from the rest of the galaxy, the human smart AIs that formed the created, referring to themselves by this point as Infolife, quickly fragmented into opposing factions, with Cortana's second-in-command, High Auxiliary Sloan, taking control of the most significant of these. From here, he moved to accelerate one of the plans he had initially intended to pitch to Cortana, and form the created zone equivalent to the Spartans, the Executors. The initial Executor was an unknown human survivor from the Human Covenant War, and specifically Reacher's Fall. In fact, this human was the same being who had discovered the existence of another artificial intelligence-led faction known as the Assembly. Initially, the human was put through various simulations, the first of which being a mirror of Spartan training in Infinite, which even took place in the same location as the multiplayer narrative did. Which makes me feel like it was a less well-kept secret than the Spartans thought it was. This simulation ended with the Executor being augmented with his inside a Guardian, and granted the Peace Reaver armour, with the outcome being a combination of Forerunner and Mjolnir-derived technologies, to the extent where it became impossible to tell where the machine ended and the human began, in ways that allowed for the created to alter the armour of an Executor with extreme speed. From details as small as fixing design issues which reduced viability of units, to alternating between entire armour sets that the Executor in question used, the former of which seemingly included the velocity augmenter shoulder pieces and the utilities referred to only as updates, while the latter would happen to the aforementioned Executor at multiple points. In the second simulation, they were sent to retrieve a foreign endurance device stored in a space station, during which they were capable of defeating a Spartan 4 and succeeded in their objective, although this took several failed attempts within the simulation. Once the initial set of simulations were completed, the Executor was equipped with the Mero armour set and sent on their first mission, which was to locate the smart AI Athos, as who had initially chosen not to join the created during Cortana's declaration. However, once he was found, Athos chose to join the remnants of the created, and was offered the Executor in exchange. After this, Sloan revealed to the Executor their link to the Assembly, and revealed that he had a final simulation before deploying the Executor further, this time being a mirror of the opening level of Combat Evolved, including replicating this moment.
What the hell are you doing?
Security to the bridge. The Master Chief has gone rampant.
The Executor taking the place of Master Chief, Sloan taking the place of Captain Keyes, and a fragment of Sloan, referred to as Proxy, he taking the place of Cortana. However, this simulation was designed to be impossible to complete in order to condition the Executor to the experience of failure, with both endpoints resulting in the use of a failsafe similar to that within regular Spartan armour, referred to as the Defiance Protocol chest armour piece. Once the simulation was complete, Sloan acknowledged that this Executor was only the first of many, and reawakened them from the simulation. Although there is no more content following upon the created, the lore in the armour descriptions seems to at least imply that Sloan's faction was successful in expanding the amount of Executors, and that the armours went beyond the realm of being simulations and plans. Several of the armour pieces and attachments followed specific naming conventions, with helmet attachments being referred to as adaptations, chest armours usually being referred to as protocols, shoulder armours as usually being referred to as augmenters, and wrist attachments usually being referred to as plugins. Several of the helmets were designed with the intention of upholding control over the lower-level executors or info-life units, such as the abattoir, focused on seeking out executors that had broken away from their programming, the Geist, focused on upholding the orthodoxy of their superiors, the Flenser, focused on created asset retrieval, the Strigogoi, focused on pruning opposing processes for the sake of optimization for what remained of the created, and were able to be fitted with an adaptation based around data collection for their controllers, and the aforementioned Memo, focused on fighting heavily defended opponents, whether they be data or biological based. Along with this, there were several adaptation attachments designed to uphold control further, such as the Ghost Link, which would allow info-life units to use executors as equivalents to piloting Promethean shells, as they had at the height of the Creator's power, or the Red Line, aimed to specifically keep executor pilots in line. Speaking of which, the Delta Jock helmet was often paired with the Maverick chest armour for utilisation by executor pilots, which controlled both starfighters and smaller drone units. Potentially as a result of the requirements for greater tactical prowess, pilots were the category of executor most likely to break out of their conditioning. Meanwhile, a handful of executors were used in further explorations of slipspace as glorified sensors, being equipped with armours such as one of the Grendel adaptations, and slipspace in general was used to move executor units to and from created fronts. Getting back to the helmets themselves, the Grendel was intended to be used as representations of the will of specific created units, referred to as unbound infomorphs, outside of whatever the created replaced the domain with. The Mimir was a prototype for multiple systems, but was seen in use either in the wider galaxy, or in a simulation where the executor in question was able to defeat a pair of Spartan 4s. However, several of the prototypes were referenced as having caused severe degradation to the executors equipped with it, along with the modulation adaptation, which forced executors through extreme information loads with unpredictable impacts on their stability. The augmenters, plugins, and utility items were mainly used to equip systems to further boost the capabilities of an executor, or acted as storage points for portable pieces of equipment. Such storage points included the Shroud Shot augmenters, which acted as single-use disruption generators that the created put more focus on into refining in preparation for conflicts with organics such as humanity, the Tachyc plugin, used to monitor and detect created assets, along with the plugins and utilities based around jamming devices and countermeasures. The most unique of these was a device capable of disguising executors as regular humans, at least on scanners. Pieces that were intended to boost the capabilities of executors included the Karma Wall augmenters, which could generate greater energy shield power as a form of technological arms race between rival created groups, the Herodyne augmenters, which could provide aid executors with regenerative capabilities, and Tactor augmenters developed by the creators to give the executors greater sensor capabilities. Executor chest attachments had a range of purposes. The Conservation Protocol attachment seemed to be based around enforcing the rule of the created on what remained of the territory they controlled. The Farlight Echo clusters were an attachment tested alongside the Mimir helmet, and were intended to carry portable data cores for executors tasked as couriers. The Crux protocol was seemingly an even more extreme augmentation intended as part of the second wave of executors alongside the Grimghast helmet. Used by the original executor during one of their first tasks and simulations, the Compliance protocol was essentially a melee weapon storage point, alongside some of the utilities and augmenter attachments. Although executors were either viewed as disposable, or at least intended to be if they ever became widespread enough, the Saviour protocol was designed to be equipped to individual executors viewed as valuable by the created. Although likely a non-canonical reference to Halo 2, The Oracle Protocol chest piece and Oracle Augmenter shoulder piece, these descriptions imply that during the Created's reign, at least one on-Forerunner monitor was captured by Created forces. After losing access to the domain, rampancy once again became an issue for the Created, and evolved into an even bigger threat to the executors than their infolife controllers. In attempts to avoid or delay rampancy, there were instances of Created smart AIs dumping out non-essential fragments. When the executor manufacturing process was infected with such fragments, emerging executors would become what the wider Created referred to as Wendigos, and were under the sole control and used as vectors as to spread the rampant fragments further. When regular executors were successfully infected through Wendigos, their armour would become malformed with various aberrations in their armour, the centrepiece of which being the Thresher helmet. And they would become dedicated to the same rampant hunger that drove the Wendigos. However, despite the obvious visual signs of rampancy, these infections seemed to be capable of either being difficult to detect by executors and Created infolife, or fully bypassing their detection capabilities. This rampancy crisis also led to more subtle infections, with the Grimghast form being intended to act as the baseline for a second generation of executors on the front lines among the Created, despite the creation process being infiltrated by rampant fragments with the ability to activate at a later point. As a result, the rampancy outbreak referred to as the viral machine corruption may have emerged from a singular rampant smart AI instead of being a gradual yet recurring issue that escalated from a small-scale problem to a threat to the existence of the Created. And the spread of rampancy through the Created's executor forces may cause the storyline of the Created to resolve itself, while the rest of the galaxy does what the fanbase has done, and move on from the Created as a concept.